Well, their argument, for the folks that buy into it, their argument is that they just want the physical release that's attached to sex without, feeling the need to answer to anyone, without feeling the need to respond to anyone, anything along those lines. I think the use of friend is just sort of, the way of softening it, because in most cases it seems to emerge the way a lot of people talked about it here, where it might be someone that was sort of your associate, but it probably wasn't someone that was, your best girlfriend or your best guy friend that you just happened to fall into this situation with. Interestingly though, I found where some groups use different language, and where kind of along the lines of what Daryl was saying, that to him a friend with benefit is only a person that you are having sex with. Well, they just called that an F-buddy or something along those lines. But then they also had other names for how they define the people within those groups. And so sort of the higher up you are, if I kind of think that you're a cool person, I just don't necessarily desire to be in a committed relationship with you, that's when they tended to fall into the friends with benefit zone.
Good. How about a little bit about the media? What do you think? Because you study pop culture.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. That's my other area. I look a lot at health comm, and I look a lot at popular culture, and I try to see where the intersections are. Where is there overlap? And I don't know if you guys saw, but just this year alone, there were 2 movies that came out that connect with this topic directly. The one movie was Friends with Benefits.
Right.
That was the name of the movie. And then the other one was called, I think, Just Friends. And so the Just Friends one came out much later in 2011, and I don't know if it got quite as much play as Friends with Benefits because it came out a little sooner. But in both cases, it went back and forth in the struggle of these rules and the situation and this, this situation that we often find ourselves in, and thinking that we can control our emotions, we can do this but not do this. And so if you even look at the trailer for Friends with Benefits, that's how it starts out. Like, they happen to have been friends, they had just gotten out of relationships, both of them, and they said, okay, we can do this. And they sit down and they talk about the rules for this particular relationship. And so Ashton Kutcher's character is like trying to be friendly and tells her that she looks really nice or something, and she's like, no, that'll create emotional attachment, don't do that. And so popular culture has given us so many examples of this in and of itself. Some of you might remember even a few years ago the song Buddy by Musiq Soulchild, which absolutely chronicles a friends with benefits relationship. However, so many people were like, oh my gosh, I love this song, it's so sweet, it's so this and that. And then when you really broke it down and paid attention to the words, you said, wait a minute, did he just say that he wants to sleep with me, but if I'm in public and he's with somebody else, I can't say anything because we're just buddies and he didn't come with me, so I have to be okay with that, and he'll call me later on tonight. And so, it's everywhere in our media, it's everywhere in our culture, and so I think it most certainly influences, or we're influenced by, we influence it, that whole what came first, the chicken or the egg scenario, but media most certainly does influence it quite a great deal.
Anybody have anything to add about the media piece? Anybody see either of those movies?
I always see a couple hints.
Friends with Benefits, and what's the newer one? I didn't see
Just Friends.
Just Friends.
Or No Strings Attached.
Yeah. Oh, anybody see that one? Did you see them both?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Oh yeah.
I like the one with Justin better.
Okay.
Justin Timberlake. Yeah. That's the Friends with Benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And I didn't see either. Like, are they realistic depictions of what goes on?
So, like, they start off as just friends, but eventually they got attached because I think the problem with both movies is that they started hanging out outside the sex, and that I think created emotion on both parts, not just the girl, both guy and girl.
Right.
And in the one with Ashton, he kind of fell for her first, and I forgot. I think the one for Justin fell for her first too. So the guys actually fell for the girls before the girls.
Oh, okay. So the guys developed the emotions before the girls.
Yeah.
Okay. Daryl, were you gonna say something? No, you're done. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the health part. What do you think we need to think about when we think about health and friends with benefits? Right, I heard someone say STDs, so sexually transmitted infections. What else? Missing another big one. Children, right? Pregnancy. Yeah. So another reason why communication might be important, and we discussed this a little bit when we were discussing how to go about finding out if it's a safe relationship or a safe place to be, by asking the person, do you protect yourself, or you can ask, have you been tested, or we need to use protection. I mean that's just something you're going to have to figure out how to address. What do you think?
Well, I think something that we talked about, you know, just in our own conversation that I hadn't thought about is who's responsible for protection. Who's responsible? You know, if you're using condoms, are we assuming that, you know, that the guy is responsible for purchasing those? If, you know, if a female is on some sort of birth control, are we assuming that she's responsible for that? You know, those conversations are definitely very important.
There's a financial responsibility there, and whose responsibility is it? If you're in a friends with benefits relationship and the girl is on birth control pills and maybe she's paying, I don't know, $15 a pack, is it the girl's responsibility to always pay that? Or should the other person involved in the friends with benefits chip in for that? Or if your method of birth control is condoms, is it always the guy's responsibility? Or should you share the cost? Has that ever come up with anyone, sharing the cost? Or is it something that you ever thought about before? Or would it depend on you if it's a short-term relationship versus a long-term relationship? Or an emotional relationship versus a friends with benefits relationship? What do you think? What's that? I know you think. Because you're all at Penn State and you're very intelligent. And you have finals in 2 weeks. What's that? You never thought about? I know. I don't know how many people really do. It's something to think about. What were you gonna say?
I never thought about it, but if the girl is like paying for birth control, I'm pretty sure like she's been on it before we became friends with benefits. So why would I start paying, right? And then as a male, if I'm gonna go have sex with this girl, why wouldn't I bring condoms with me all the time? You know what I mean?
Okay, so are you thinking maybe each person should be equally responsible for their own separate birth control, and then in that relationship there would be two methods being used, which is probably good because you have a hormonal method to prevent pregnancy and you have a barrier method to protect you the best it can from a sexually transmitted infection. So just things to think about. And sometimes what, at least in the human sexuality courses I teach, what comes up in discussion is if it's, you know, like a one-night stand or a booty call or something quick, they don't really discuss payment on birth control. If it's a long-term relationship, they share the payment, they share the cost. And that's what's come up in focus groups in my class.
And something else just to piggyback in regards to just health issues. You know, as we stated from the beginning, this is no judgment. We're just having a conversation about things that are occurring in our society. But less than 10% of students, and this is research across the board, this isn't just within mine, less than 10% of students that admitted that they were involved in casual sexual relationships or had been are concerned with the health risk by any stretch of the imagination. Like, so they're not thinking about STDs, they aren't thinking about pregnancies, they aren't thinking about the what ifs. And if we go back to the rules that we say are associated with this, meaning that if we're in a friends with benefits situation and I'm therefore not allowed to say, well, you know, don't sleep with anybody else, you're just sleeping with me, what happens if someone turns up pregnant? What happens if someone turns up with an STD? Because we aren't, if less than 10% of folks are concerned with this, obviously we aren't spending too much time thinking about this or unpacking this. And, you know, obviously it can be pretty turbulent if those things did happen.
Something to think about.
They're like, that's what we'll do, just think.
What do you think? Some final thoughts? What part didn't we cover about it? Any parts that we didn't cover? How about those 2 questions that we had down that we,
For them to answer.
yeah, we didn't have specific answers for?
This was one about
Oh, go
the
ahead.
virginity and all those
What?
sorts of things.
Do you wanna-
There
so we
were
actually had, like,
some
maybe-
pretty cool questions that
Yeah.
folks sent that we didn't have like a textbook answer. The one was about who are you allowed to be friends with benefits with, and some of you answered that. But the sort of catalyst to that, or why we asked, was, can a guy ask a girl that is his friend to have sex with him without her feeling disrespected?
No.
Okay, here, no from the guys. Go ahead, Daryl.
Depends on the girl. It depends on the female.
Oh, it depends on the female.
And some girls say differently. One girl might let it up, one girl might slap you.
Makes sense.
Another one.
Here, help us with this one.
This one is actually pretty good. What would be the disadvantages of losing one's virginity in a friends with benefits situation?
Yes.
Would there be disadvantages, and what would it be? Oh, go ahead. Yep.
I think, again, like where I was going from a girl's point of view, sex is so much more than like a guy's, oh yeah, I got it in. Like a girl gets very emotional from it. And I think when that happens and the guy wants nothing to do with her, feelings are going to get hurt and she's going to be very like emotionally distraught.
Okay.